Hi, my name's Chris Reedy, and this is the Ready and Willing Podcasters with our next episode. A really exciting episode, this one, that we've got Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester. Long distinguished career. We won't go into all that because it might take too long to actually mention everything that Andy's been. But me and Andy have worked together for a long time. We played football together.
We have.
We've run together. He's faster than me. Only when I'm chasing a tenner, but that would be easier. We've had a drink together. He's never bought a round yet, but there we are. But we've had a drink together. Andy, welcome.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
It's good to be on.
Yeah, good stuff. And we're doing this in conjunction with the college, so really grateful of what the college have done. I know you've done a lot of work with the college.
Oh, loads over the years. They're a great college, aren't they? And we're really lucky to have them, aren't we, in the borough?
Yeah. So it's well documented what you're doing as Mayor of Greater Manchester. Taking lots of risks, lots of different ideas. But what about, who's Andy Burnham? You know, where did you start, Andy? And where did you get to where you are now today, you know, and the family and everything that goes on?
God, who am I? That's a big existential question for an afternoon, Wednesday afternoon. But who am I? I like to think I am what you generally see. I'm probably more now what people see than they did when I was in Westminster, because you can't be yourself in Westminster. That's the thing about it. You know, you have to live up to a certain way of doing things and, you know, vote a certain way, speak a certain way, toe the line, etc. So having been Mayor of Greater Manchester for 7.5 years now, I just feel finally probably people have more of a sense of who I am. I mean, you know who I am. I kind of work hard, but I love my football, love my music, always have done. I would say, and maybe this will draw some ridicule in some quarters, certainly from my brothers, but I'm probably pretty typical of somebody from the northwest of England, I would say, in terms of, you know, born in Liverpool, got to be honest about that. My dad got a job in Manchester when I was 1, grew up in the Tween, near Leigh, but in a place called Culcheth. I mean, I
you started as a journalist, didn't you, originally?
I did. So I came back. I mean, my mum and dad didn't go to university. And they were sort of adamant that me and my brothers would, and took a lot of persuading to go, but eventually did. Came back here in the early 90s, couldn't find anything. My first job out of university was as an unpaid reporter on the Middleton Guardian, so North Manchester. That was my first job. At that point, no real thoughts of being a politician, to be honest.
So where did the politics come along then?
I was always political growing up here because I was at school in the miners' strike, you know, so I went to school in Newtonley Willows near Parkside Colliery, as was. It just was there, wasn't it? And you kind of, you're older than me. You don't know.
Yeah, thanks. Don't look it, but I'm good.
Yeah, it was in my kind of life, you know, and you kind of saw the unfairness of it all, you know, when you talk to lads at school whose dads were out on strike, and we used to bring in tins of stuff for them, and you just kind of had that sense of politics being all around. Then, you know, the 1980s became very personal for me with Hillsborough, and, you know, while I went on to do something on that professionally, as a young teenager at university, age 19, I was at the other semi-final on that day, and a lot of my friends were at Hillsborough. I'd been at Hillsborough watching Everton the year before, so that was when the 1980s came home to roost in a big way, you know, and you can't help but have been sort of radicalised a little bit by all of that, and that tipped me from journalism towards, you know, a political path. Particularly when Labour lost in '92, I was then very much on a kind of path towards, well, how can I get more involved in politics? And
so I came in politics in '96, so been involved before that. But naturally, we worked together a lot since then. We met down in Westminster a few times and had a beer and a chat, and it is a different world down there. It is a bubble. You know, and whether you like it or not, and that's part of life, what it is. So coming back to Manchester and sleeping in your own bed every night instead of being in London is a bit different. But people always said to me, what's Andy Burnham like? And I always say, what you see on TV or what you see, that's Andy. When there's no airs and graces, we are what we are, and that's where you get on. And to be quite honest, I've probably copied that bit off you. Be yourself and try and help people. You can't solve everything in the world, but if you try and do something, it's the way forward, isn't it?
Definitely. You know, I as you know, was in Westminster 16 years, proud to be the MP for Leigh, and I'd not swap that experience for anything. You know, brilliant place, fantastic people, privileged to be their MP. But there is a but. The longer I was there, and some of those big votes that we went through, Iraq and other things, you think to yourself, am I being true to myself in here? got all these people around me saying, oh, very different sort of backgrounds. Oh, you've got to do this and you've got to be with that person. And in the end, it more and more just felt like it was not my world. I always felt like I was trying to live up to what people were expecting of you in that world, but it never felt 100% me or comfortable. So, that was actually a relief in the end. When this job of Mayor of Greater Manchester came up, I thought, well, you know what? And I left with the Mayor of Liverpool, Steve Rotherham, who's, my closest friend in politics. And we just said, I think we'd be better to go out of it here and sort of build something new from the outside together. And that's what we did. And I don't think either of us regret it, Chris. We're able to be ourselves. We don't toe anyone's line. We put the place and the people here first. We try and do that. And that, I think, makes you come over differently. So when people ask you, what's Andy Burnham like? Well, hopefully they get more of a sense of it now than then. Obviously, you're a politician. You still have to think about things before you just open your mouth. You can't just as some politicians on the other side of the Atlantic just say whatever they want. I'm not like that, because I don't think you can say whatever you want when you're in a leadership position. You have to have a care for other people, don't you? And if you say something as a politician, it could legitimise some unpleasant behaviour and aimed at some community or other. You don't want to do that, and you've got to be careful at times. But, however, speak with honesty about what you're trying to do.
It's quite an important fact, that, isn't it? Because people, even though you say you can say things what you want, sometimes people look at you for leadership, but also tag on every word. So if you do say something that's not quite, and we're in that same boat at Wigan, whether it's at a local level or whatever. You
do. I mean, you're more than just a sort of a person in the pub, although I am often a person in the pub, as you know, I do like going out.
And you have bought a round, I wasn't a joke.
Occasionally. I do like to keep my feet on the ground and all of that. But when you speak on the media or in a formal setting, you're speaking for more than yourself. You're speaking for the place. Yeah. And you've always got to remember that. And everybody who lives within the place. And therefore, you've got to be careful to be fair and balanced and considered in what you say. And that's the way I go about things anyway. And
I think in politics, and you can't win everything. We know that to a certain degree. And one of the things you've touched on is Hillsborough. And I always said to people, it's one of the things that you look at the video in 2009 when Anfield was packed. And I think you was culture secretary there. I was, and you stood up there, and really, there was the ears on my arm still stand up watching that video because it was quite emotional. But how you kind of dignified yourself in that as well, because you could have easily kind of gone, hold on a minute, we were in government, it wasn't us, but you took that on the chin. You got up there, you repeated that, but actually you built that confidence up with the families, with people who ran it. And actually, you turned something which could have actually gone one way or the other there into something really positive. How you helped them people. You must be proud of that, and actually some of the things you did.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Chris. And to a degree, I am, in that it is and always will be the biggest turning point in my life, going to Anfield on that 20th anniversary. Because, as I said before, I was at the other semi-final. I knew everything about what went on that day at Hillsborough. I'd been in that Leppings Lane myself in the Central Pens just 1 year before Hillsborough. A lot of my school friends were at that semi-final that day. And I had that kind of moment in life, and these moments will come up for everybody in one way or another, when you're confronted with the thing you feel you need to do professionally, but there's the thing you feel personally. And I felt that in many ways in the biggest way, being in a government that, let's be honest, it was the previous lot, but the one I was in hadn't done enough to uncover the truth and deal with the injustice of Hillsborough. So I kind of agonised, actually, when I first got the invite from Steve Rotherham to go to the 20th anniversary. I was like, well, nobody would want me there, Steve. What would I say? What? And he said, you've got to go and you've got to deal with it directly. And I agonised about whether I should go, just thinking, well, how? What can I do here? So yeah, it was as tough as it gets, and it's kind of when you kind of in life just suddenly have to decide, no, why am I in this? What is the whole point in doing what I'm doing? And it was obviously to deal with something that I cared sort of completely personally about, and in the end, that was why I went. You know, my younger brother John just said, look, go if you're going to do something for the families. Don't go for show. Go if you're going to do something. So I'd kind of resolved to reopen it before I went. And obviously difficult that day, but my eyes were wide open. You know, I knew what I was doing by being there. And it kind of was the moment, I guess, when I took my first steps out of Westminster, because I almost made myself an outsider that day, because I didn't really tell anyone I was going. And they got a surprise, I think, you know, the rest of the cabinet when they saw me there. I was freelancing really, because I'd stepped outside that collective cabinet thing, and I just went there.
And there was no hiding places there, mate. That was everywhere, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. But I'd kind of, you know, but I decided I was going to kind of almost challenge the system from right in the heart of it. You know, I was in the cabinet, and I, you know, raised it the next day at cabinet because Gordon Brown gave me permission to raise it. I'll never forget it, because, you know, I was absolutely personally invested straight away, because I'd said to the families in a private meeting that night, I will throw whatever political capital I've got at this. You know, I'd kind of said that to them eye to eye. And then I'm in a cabinet meeting the next day where some of my colleagues are saying, oh no, we can't do this, we can't reopen Hillsborough, you know, the precedent it will set, blah, blah, blah. And I was just thinking, if you block this, you know, I'm walking out of this cabinet straight away. And I'll never forget Gordon Brown kind of summing up the discussion, going, oh, I've heard a lot of people's concerns, but we're going to back Andy on this. I'll never forget that, Chris, as long as I live. When Gordon said those words, we're going to back Andy on this. It was like, you know, in a lifetime, I don't think it would ever, I don't think anything will ever happen to me that will be more kind of significant than that. Because, you know, I lived it, as I say, as a 19-year-old, and there I was 20 years later sitting in cabinet trying to move it on. And yeah, that I'll forever be grateful to Gordon for that.
Thanks for sharing that.
No problem.
I know it's emotional for you, and it brings it back, but it's emotional for a lot of people in Liverpool and everybody who's still struggling with that today, because it's still a loss to their families.
100%. And, you know, and in some ways, you know, what we did, I think, I mean, it wasn't, when I say we, the families led the fight, didn't they? I mean, Steve Rotherham and I just tried to back them up and open doors for them. That's all we did. They were the people who fought and got the breakthrough. But look at what's happening now. You're starting to see the same thing being exposed in so many areas, and Hillsborough was the one that's kind of opened it all up. So the postmasters and mistresses, same thing, where there's been a failing of the state, in that case the post office, but what does it do? It tries to blame the victims. So they were petty thieves taking money out of the post office till or whatever. In the Liverpool fans' case, or they were drunk, ticketless, and all of that. And, you know, we've had it now with contaminated blood, the same, that, you know, people in some ways were bringing the illnesses on themselves. So the same thing gets repeated, and actually the crowning achievement is almost now really with Keir Starmer promising a Hillsborough law. And that will place a legal duty on police and public servants to tell the truth at the first time of asking. And actually, you know, touch wood and everything, fingers crossed, if that comes through, you know, that will actually be a permanent change in the running of the country, which Hillsborough and the campaigners will have brought about the families.
Let's hope. I mean, the only kind of, if you like, disappointment being the right word, is the length of time it takes. You know that you've been in the system and how long it takes to get that through and actually coming out the other side. The post office still dealing with that all them years.
Yeah.
You know, and it takes time.
Well, that's what the Hillsborough law is intended to address, because the lack of that duty of candour means the system puts a sort of an iron grip on it. The Treasury says, don't admit any liability. And then all the government departments start coming up with lies and half-truths and cover-up, etc. I mean, that's the problem that the Hillsborough law is trying to break through. So, yeah, it's massive. You know, you can look at it in terms of Grenfell and other things. You know, this pattern has repeated all through our lives. There's issues from the 70s in Northern Ireland that are still not properly dealt with. There's the nuclear test veterans. That's another one, back to the 50s, where you have proud servicemen from this borough who went overseas and were thrown in front of nuclear radiation. That's a live cover-up that's gone on for decades. And we still need to deal with that one. But yeah, we've hopefully achieved something.
I mean, only a few weeks ago we had the local trust up, and there was 20 different councils from all over the country looking at Wigan and Leigh work, and they think there's a secret farmer in Wigan that we've got that does all this. But one of the things I said to them, and I said to many councillors, and me and Dave Mullin talk, is you want to leave a legacy, don't you? When you do a job like this, you want to be able to sit back at some point and go, I made a difference. And I think the Hillsborough one was, you did. You was part of it, and that's well documented that what you did was great. But you're quite right, and it'd be wrong to say it was me, because I know you wouldn't do that. It was part of a big establishment going forward.
Bear in mind, though, Chris, at the time I was a Wigan Borough MP, and I absolutely would say that I got the best possible sort of apprenticeship working with you all in the borough, and Peter Smith at the time, David now. I think there's a way of working in the borough that is down to earth. It's kind of connected, isn't it, with the community. And I feel that when I was in Westminster, I was a better MP because I was a Wigan Borough MP. Because I think there is a good culture within the borough, and I think I was privileged really to represent this place.
We'll touch on a couple of other things. And initially, we've done lots of stuff together. We've had some, if you like, some good time. We've had some laughs. We've done lots of things. Crazy Golf at A was quite funny, even though we had to do all that crazy stuff.
I remember it well. I beat you, I think.
You did. And Laura. You beat Laura. But if you remember, I can't remember what year it was, the Brighton conference was after the leadership election.
Yeah.
You was deflated. You was deflated after that. We met you. I think my daughter, Kelly, was with us.
I remember.
Joe Platt.
Yes.
There's a few people, and we went into a bar in Brighton, and you was really like. My daughter was a Jeremy Corbyn supporter, which was really good at that time and you had that conversation with her about the honesty about doing things, and people still talk to me about actually things go on in different eras, don't they? They feel, and this is lots of the world would have been a different place. You could have ended up being PM, and blah blah blah. Is there some regrets there of how you could have done that differently or whatever? Sorry, mate.
No, it's a fair question. No, I definitely could have done. The problem is, when you go into a leadership election, particularly when you're the front runner, and I think David Miliband had this in 2010, you just got all the pressure of the front runner, and you got all these people in your ear, and you got to say this, and it's that back. It's like the Westminster culture on stilts when you're in that position, because everyone wants a bit of it, and I look back and made mistakes myself in that leadership election. But am I disappointed about the way things have worked out? No, I'm not. No, I think I'm a better politician for what I've done now. By getting outside of that world and kind of just coming at it a different way again. I think I'm much better, and I've made probably a bigger contribution where I am than probably anything I could have done.
The point I was trying to come to, in a sense, we spoke to lots of students at the college while we're doing these podcasts, and I've kind of spoke to them about different paths. You'll start off on one path and it leads to another one. You came out of that and probably at that point disappointed that you didn't get what you needed to, but moved on to a different path of doing the Mayor of Greater Manchester, and as you said, making a bigger difference. So actually what the message I was kind of saying to students is, don't think if sometimes the door closes for you, there's other doors that open.
I often use the same example when I speak to young people. Life's not a straight line, is it?
No.
It's not a sort of you achieve this and achieve that, and it's just not, is it? And it's actually about learning how one thing takes you one way, and then what you use from that to come back at things. I often speak to them about that Hillsborough example, because people will have versions of the same thing in their life. You work for an organisation, you don't like something of what they're doing, you think, should I challenge this or should I not? And sometimes those moments are defining in life, whichever way you go with it, aren't they? And so, I think parts of my journey hopefully do sort of, help give encouragement to people, because nothing's the be all and end all, is it? It doesn't go for you. All right, we'll come at it a different way and learn from it, and get stronger from it. The one thing, my wife's my biggest critic, but is yours your biggest critic?
Yeah. My daughter.
I've got them too as well now. They weren't when they were young, but now they're joining in with her as well. So I've got three of them. But the only thing she ever has said about my political career is that if I had beaten Corbyn, she thinks that Brexit might not have happened, which is quite a hard thing to. And I'm not sure she's right, if I'm honest. So I think, if we could have just lent a bit more into the north on it and get through, because I was talking about the issues that Leigh was facing through free movement of labour in terms of that was one of the, you could call it a mistake, and I don't know whether it is or it isn't, but in that leadership election, I was confronting the party with some of the difficult things that were going on in the north, and I didn't think it was taking full attention of. I remember getting booed at hustings in London because I even mentioned there's some issues with Europe that need to change. But I do look back and think, if we'd have gone at that referendum a bit more about Europe's not perfect, it needs to change this, and then remain on that. But maybe looking back, that might have gone a bit differently. But who knows? That's all hindsight,
I'd
Chris,
never thought about that one, but that's quite thought-provoking, that, isn't it?
Well, she is my arch critic, by the way. I do a media interview, or even this podcast. She often will text me back after a media interview that she's heard on the Today programme when she's travelling to work. And it will come back in block capital letters, which is never a good sign, is it, from your wife? But it will say, answer the F*** question. I'm not sure I can say this on this podcast, but that's the level of critic I've got at home. I don't know whether
maybe a good answer for when you go back home now, because you can actually say that
I did answer the question.
You said that to me, but what I want is I wanted to be sat on that couch, and she can be the next on the podcast here, so she can actually tell us who the real Andy is.
Make her answer some questions. Oh yeah, don't ask her that question. That would be a terrifying podcast if you did it. If you did that,
But so that's it. As Mayor of Greater Manchester, the big one was the bus industry. I worked in transport, as you know, for a long time. People always spoke to me on that when I was working. Deregulation in '86 was probably the worst thing that happened to the industry. You brought it back. It took a while to get it back. It now seems to be settling. Big move that. We've just got the first one in our patch is the buzz that's come back, which we call Laura's buzz, because Laura's done all the work on it.
Yeah, she's done brilliant. Councillor Laura Flynn, for those who don't know, she's done a great job getting a service back into Aspel.
The Flinny Flyer, we're going to call the buzz, but there we are. And she said to me, "Are you quite happy that I take the plaudits?" I said, "Well, great, because when that first bus fails, Laura, your head will be on the block, not mine." Anyway.
True politician.
But great, and it proved, because lots of people said to us it didn't work commercially, that route. But this one will.
Do you know, the way I kind of see my political career a bit is correcting things that went wrong in the 1980s. Because as I said, that was my sort of formative years. And I look back and I without getting too political, I do blame a certain prime minister who was around at that time. For making a lot of things go wrong. Because these communities suffered a lot, didn't they, in that period? This was still a mining area. Pretty much all of the borough was. But the buses, I remember the orange and white GM buses, 10p from Leigh to the Arndale. And then all of a sudden, I come home from university and was like, what's happened here? Prices through the roof. And that was one of the reasons I had to pack in the job at Middleton Guardian. I couldn't afford to get over from Leigh to, particularly when I was unpaid. But now I look at housing and, all of that right to buy that's left us with a big housing crisis, and water, you look at that now, and the sewage and the rivers and the sea. I do think we took a very big wrong turn. And what I'm trying to do through my current job is start to repair some of that. So putting the buses back under public control, making them work for the people rather than for profit, which is where they've been for 4 decades.
Definitely.
Yeah, they're not perfect yet, Chris, but they are settling down. And, that I get more out of that than anything else I achieved in Westminster, actually. Those kind of things matter a lot to me.
Because you made that difference for people. And in respect.
Well, yeah, I made the decision, and sometimes in life you make a decision, you've got to accept the consequences if it's going wrong and it's not helping people. But I think that one is helping people. I'm going to keep the £2 fare cap all the way through 2025. That will help people in this borough, hopefully. I've made the travel for kids coming to this college free, so the R-Pass, free bus travel. Massive, I think, to a lot of young people growing up in. Those things in the end are kind of why I do it, and it's not always the big ticket things like Hillsborough or anything.
But it's what matters to people, isn't it?
It is, when you can say that will change, even if it's 1 or 2 lives, but hopefully more. That's why you do it. And I know people look at politicians and think that's not why they're in it. To be fair, in our world, most people are, aren't they? And I think, but sometimes politicians get drawn into things that give the wrong impression, don't they? That
Yeah.
it comes out to the public that they don't care about those things, but most do, don't they?
And
It's still an honourable profession, just
it is,
about. Isn't
and
it?
I think if you can justify yourself, that you can't make everything right, and that's
Exactly.
Like that. So,
Yeah.
but if you've got the morals to know what you're doing,
True.
and you build that up, don't you, a reputation.
That's it.
I think the big key these days is social media, isn't it? It's massively. And
Do you know, changed the game. It was a total and utter game changer. So I go into Parliament in 2001. So that was when I was first elected as the MP for Leigh. So happily doing my thing for 8 years till 2009-10. It's like, it was like playing, football for the first, like the game changed all of a sudden. And, I came out for the second half of my parliamentary career and it was rugby league and no one had told you. You know what I mean? It just became a much more contact sport in a brutal way. Where social media just totally changed the way politics was. I remember being in the Commons one time. This would have been in like the early 2010s. And I remember watching someone in the Commons who was giving a speech who became like really weirdly sort of agitated and screaming and this, like, and I was like, what's going on there? And one of the MPs I was sitting there just nudged me, it's for his social media. And I just suddenly thought,
that's the world.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, this like performative thing is coming. And I remember that moment thinking, and I do think, I think it's messed politics up, social media, because it's made it brutal for those who are receiving all the abuse and everything. But at the same time, politicians have played up to some of the worst side of it as well by, do you know what I mean? It's one thing about getting your point over, but there's a different thing, isn't there, about
that's right.
doing it in a slightly excessive way or in an exaggerated way,
well,
which I think it has exaggerated.
Keyboard warriors with
bad behaviour.
We talk about that, don't we?
There's that, but politicians have played up to it with some of their approach.
And actually, I've done mentoring with councillors at Wigan and chatted to me and David, and some of them don't like the social media, but it's here to stay, and it'll only get more intense. So you either deal with it and work with it, or you die with it, don't you?
I think it. Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think it needs regulating though. I do. I just don't think you get the right to go on with like a name like Concerned Citizen or something, or Active Patriot or whatever these accounts are, and just say whatever you like. Free speech, yes, but it comes with responsibility and accountability. So I think you should have your name on your account. That's the way I see it. I don't think you should be hiding behind these sort of, these pseudonyms, whatever. No, you should be out there. If you're going to say something, say it, but then let people hold you to account for it. That's free speech has to come with that check and balance. You can't be just free speech with no responsibility, because you're not declaring who you are.
I'm going to finish something, Andy, because we could sit here for hours, mate, and if we had a pint, we'd be here longer. We would do that. But
you're not buying me once, right?
After, mate, we'll do that. Yeah, I've got Franco's. We've got Franco's after. See what's next for Andy in Greater Manchester? What's our next big thing coming up?
We've got to bring rail into the B network. And so Wigan will benefit from that, because it'll bring the Wigan Wallgate into as a B network rail station. That comes next. I think we do have to get much more serious about housing. So I've got a big housing first drive going on. So regulation of private rented sector, building more council housing, which I know you want to do here. Yeah. And then, given where we are, I just wanted to say something about young people, because here's my summary, Chris, as to where Greater Manchester is at. And I do sort of play it back to my own youth, because I always like to kind of pitch what I'm doing in politics, learning from what was my experience. So I said before, when I came back here from university and tried to find something, I couldn't. And I had to do what a generation of people of my age had to do, which is to get on in life, we had to go south. And that's in the end what I did. You had to leave if you're going to get on in life, because there was no jobs here. But I look at Greater Manchester today, and that isn't the case. Particularly, let's be honest, less so in the outer boroughs, but definitely as you get more towards the city, media city. Yeah, there are plentiful good jobs there, really good jobs. People can make a really good living and not suffer a detriment by staying, whereas you would have done in the past. But that's not true anymore. However, if I think of the kids growing up in this borough or those living closer to the city centre, I think it's still the case that They can see the skyscrapers from their bedroom window, but they can't see a path for them.
Aye, and here we've got Amy and Jack who are going to interrogate our guest, Andy Burnham. Hopefully not. So over to you guys.
Hello.
I
was just wondering, obviously your job might be quite challenging, it is a quite a big position. What are the main challenges of being mayor?
Oh, no, it is challenging. I'm not going to sort of say it's not, it's just the reality that anything can happen on any given day and you have to be able to respond to it. 2 weeks after I became the mayor of Greater Manchester, you might remember the terrorist attack at the Manchester Arena, and, nothing quite prepares you really for a moment like that. All you have to do is kind of in the moment just, think it through and, try and, speak in a way that's right for the moment and the place that you're in, and you just make your judgments with, the people in mind always. So challenges will come at you thick and fast. That's a big one, but they come in different ways. I just think Chris and I were saying before, you have to be just true to yourself. Speak in a way that doesn't avoid the issues. When I left Westminster, I kind of took a vow that I'd stop speaking like they do down there. Just be myself a bit more. And you just have to deal with what comes at you, as we were saying before. Not everything will be perfect. Some things will go wrong, and you just got to learn to sort of take all of that, deal with it, learn from it, keep moving on, and keep, keep going out there and facing up to what comes your way.
What's your journey been like getting to where you are now?
Well, a very kind of maybe unexpected one, in that my mum and dad weren't in politics. They didn't go to university. They're both from Liverpool. I was born there. My dad got a job in Manchester, so I kind of grew up in this area, the middle bit between the two big cities, and loved them both. Pretty ordinary sort of northwest upbringing, and then just life took me on a sort of path that I didn't think would have opened up. So I somehow got to Cambridge because a teacher at my school in Newton-le-Willow said you should apply, and I just thought that won't be me. I'll never get there. I did. Got to Cambridge and had all this imposter syndrome and thought, well, I'm going to get chucked out any second here, and somehow kind of made it through. Eventually, by luck, started to get interested in politics and was just sitting next to somebody in my job saying, oh, you should work for my stepmom, she's just become an MP. It was like a total piece of random luck. In the end, I did work for Tessa Jowell, who was that MP. Got into Parliament, got the same imposter syndrome again. So at every level, I've kind of, things have opened up and happened that have been quite fortuitous, I guess, in many ways. But I've had to sort of teach myself that I can cope in those environments. And I think it's a reality of many young people growing up in the Wigan Borough or in the North more broadly. You kind of constantly say, oh, I can't do this. I'm not good enough to be, but you are. And I, constantly say that to people. We just, the good thing about people in this area, people aren't arrogant. They're connected and they treat other people well and everything. But sometimes we hold ourselves back a little too much as well. And that's why I'm fascinated that you two are putting yourselves forward to be actors, which absolutely, if you believe that, you will be, and as I believe you will be, you'll do it. Don't do the northern thing sometimes. Well, I like the fact we're not overbearing, you know what I mean? Right. But sometimes we're a bit too, I'm not sure I could. Yeah, well, you can do it.
You can do anything you want to do, innit?
Correct.
Anything you want to do.
If I've done all of this, then absolutely you can.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
But I mean it, honestly. It's born out of experience. If I look back, if I think I was your age, and if I'd have thought about what I would have done, I wouldn't have been able to believe it would have been possible. But I think that's the kind of thing, isn't it? Things are possible, and you've really got to be careful not to talk yourselves down from achieving those things.
Yeah, and obviously Manchester is such a diverse place. So how do you find navigating all these cultures and diversities? How do you incorporate that into your leadership?
Well, I think it's its strength, and I mean that genuinely, and not a kind of corny slogan. I think the diversity of Greater Manchester is what makes it great, in that people from all, 10 boroughs for a start off, all backgrounds, there are different outlooks, but they all bring something different to the party. Even the Wiganers, who are a bit more out on a limb in Greater Manchester. But no, I think, there's brilliant places and people as part of, and I think still what makes Greater Manchester the place that it is the warmth of the people. I think that is the differentiating thing about it. But obviously over time, welcome people from other cultures around the world, and yet the place still holds together as a, you know, a place of, I don't know, of progress. And the thing I always point back to people, particularly in these more difficult days that we're living in now, you know, let's be true to the history of Greater Manchester. I always point people back to 1862, when Manchester was the cotton capital of the world, and the humble workers of Manchester took a vote that they would not handle slave pit cotton. You know, that was the height of the American Civil War, and it helped end the American Civil War. That was what they did back then, you know. So hang on a minute, that is us. That's what we're about. And it kind of always says to me that, you know, celebrating our equality, diversity, and all of that is true to what the place has always been. And those who are trying to sort of drive wedges and make the place all feel darker, they're the ones trying to make us something that we've never been. So that's how I like to think that the way I do my job, where, you know, I always say that the B symbol, and it's on the buses now, as you know, and everything. What is that saying? It's saying that we're all just players. You know, we're all in a team, aren't we, trying to make it work for everybody. And no one's more important than anyone else. You know, that's how Greater Manchester has always been. The B is a symbol for a reason, and we should really stick true to that tradition, particularly in difficult times.
Treat as you want to be treated, isn't it? It's an old saying, isn't it?
100%.
And what kind of advice would you give to young people and students that want to get into politics?
Don't do it. Only joking.
I think we'd say do it.
Yeah,
so
we would. Yeah, we would.
But do it with your eyes open.
Yeah,
Do
definitely.
it with your eyes open. We were saying before, I was in Parliament for 16 years, 8 before, 8 BSM, 8 ASM, before social media, 8 after social media. And as I said to Chris before, it was like playing football for 8 years. Then all of a sudden the rules changed at half time and it became like rugby league for the second half. And no one quite told you it was going to change like that. So social media did completely make it more brutal, definitely. I'm not going to say it didn't, it did. But I think that's true of anyone in the public eye. Actors would say the same, I think.
Definitely.
Footballers would say the same. You know, it's kind of both a wonderful thing in that you can communicate to a lot of people very quickly, but they can communicate back to you in difficult moments, and it can be a really hard thing. But the thing I would say is, and all of that is difficult, but and if you've got your eyes open to that, it helps. But in politics, you can do things that no other profession allows. You can make changes to make the world a better place as you see it. You can do things to improve people's lives. So, for instance, something maybe relevant to you too, the hour pass, the free bus pass that I brought in. You know, I brought that in because I struggled with that issue when I was younger. So, you know, it really matters to me that a kid growing up in the Wigan borough should have Greater Manchester as their oyster. The wealth of their mum and dad should have no bearing, to me anyway, on where they go and how they try and find the opportunity. So if you can do things like that, you know, you get the difficult stuff of politics becomes worthwhile because you can make kind of changes that you really passionately believe in, and that's what I would say. So do it, but conscious of all of the challenges, but also recognising that you can do things that other people can't.
And if you weren't a politician, if this career path kind of passed you by, what would you go into?
It's quite good at football, aren't it?
that was the first plan when I was in primary school, but there were various others. Both my brothers are in education, so I guess maybe likely I would have ended up there. I did try and become a journalist when I left university. That was my first career. So it will be in that type of space, I think. But you know, I think it's just interesting, isn't it? I would always say to any young person listening to this, you'll get all this advice, particularly sometimes from your parents, saying, "Oh, you know, no, you won't get a job with that degree. You know, go for that." But I did take an English degree. Your drama clearly is your passion. I always think you're going to be better at something if you're passionate about it, don't you?
Definitely.
And you put a lot more of yourself into it. You then come over differently to people because of that passion. So I would always say that to, you know, follow your passion and follow what motivates you, because then I think you'll be better at whatever you choose.
Been waiting a while, guy, haven't you? So good, mate. Good.
Yeah, sorry to keep you waiting.
You
see, we can talk as politicians. You see,
I've got one question here for you. How did you, because you were a big involvement with Wigan and Leigh and the campuses, especially the Leigh campus, I want to just know how you got involved with that and how it came might go around?
Yeah, so I was the MP for Leigh in 2001, and obviously you start to form a connection straight away with the college, Wigan and Leigh College, a big institution within the borough. But what I came to notice myself, I was somebody who wanted to really focus on young people and how you help young people get on in life, particularly young people from this borough. And I was just so impressed with the college in the way that they, were really working hard to lift the life chances of young people in Leigh, but also across the borough. And I came to view Wigan and Leigh College as a real engine of social mobility. Really giving young people from, still a borough that has its challenges, doesn't it? And where young people aren't necessarily born with a silver spoon in their mouth, who don't have connected parents and don't, get all of the doors open for them that perhaps others do. The college, to me, was a really important vehicle of that, turning people's lives around. And particularly in 2000, well, Chris will remember, if we go back to sort of the mid-2000s, Wigan and Leigh College at its Leigh campus didn't have the best college. It's true. The sixth form bit, the A-level bit, was a pretty old, depressing building. And we went to the college with the vision for a college as being part of a much bigger sports campus. And sometimes, with education institutions, they may not, oh, well, we're fine, we're doing what we do, and that's weird. But actually the college didn't say that. They said, no, we want to be part of this. We think this could be great for the young people that we want to, give new experiences to. And, to their great credit, Wigan and Leigh College were like an early sort of founder member of Leigh Sports Village. And look at Leigh Sports Village today and look at what it's brought to this borough, the Women's Euros, the Rugby League World Cup, Elton John.
Yeah, Lionel Richie.
Not that I went to that.
I didn't.
More your music than
Yeah.
But the serious point is, the college was a sort of, was a big part of the vision of that. So, I'm really proud of the college, actually, and I've seen it grow over the years. And, even though I'm a bit less connected to it now, being more mayor of Greater Manchester, I still, feel very proud of the college. And it's great that the principal of the college is now working with us at a Greater Manchester level. So Anna Dawes is very much a leading voice in the development of what we call it the Greater Manchester Baccalaureate. And what I mean by that is an equal alternative to the university route. It's still the case that about 2/3 of young people in this borough, probably more, don't go on the traditional university route. And I don't think the English education system has ever really been kind of created with them in mind. Whereas what we're trying to do in Greater Manchester is say, no, let's have a system that is built with them in mind, that does give real opportunities for those who want something different than university. And it's just great for me to see Wigan and Leigh College at the heart of building that new approach to education.
And another point is when you have an issue and you have to resolve it, but you may have people that don't have the same view as you, how do you work around that and maybe work with them to resolve the issue?
That's a really, really important question. Because at the moment in politics, there's a little bit of people sort of grandstanding. They take a position on social media just for the show of it, but don't actually sit down and try and move something forward. And you learn in politics, don't you? If you actually want to move something forward, you do have to sort of meet people in the middle. And that seems a bit out of fashion at the moment. Everyone wants to, as I say, stick in their own little place and, sort of, take a really moral high ground position. But actually politics is compromise, and it does require, doesn't it, sometimes to sort of find where you can agree with people.
Yep.
It looks like these days people are looking for where they disagree and making a big deal out of that. Well, actually politics should really be the art of finding agreement. So the big example I could point you to in my career was Hillsborough, when I tried to reopen it following the 20th anniversary. And I realised, I was so emotionally and completely invested in trying to achieve this for the families. But I quickly realised when I got back to Parliament that not everyone thought the same about it or prioritised it in the way that I did. Yep. And I kind of felt I had to sort of build bridges. And to be fair to her, Theresa May began to become interested in it and started to ask me something about it because she'd heard me speak in the Commons on it. And I realised that was if I could persuade her to become more involved as Home Secretary, that would be like massive for the campaign, really. And she absolutely did and became as committed as I was to the whole thing. And I don't think we'd have made the achievements that we did without the help of what was then a Conservative Home Secretary or a Conservative Prime Minister. You know, the younger me wouldn't have imagined working with people like that. But in the end in life, you do have to, you know, reach beyond your own comfort zone and say, well, okay, I do need your help. And if we're going to do this, it's stronger because we're coming at it from different places, but we're going to meet in the middle. And the power of that, of us coming together, will actually hopefully unlock it as it did. So, you know, it's a really good question. Yeah. And I think your generation, if I could put it this way, I personally think that my generation has messed up politics and left it in a pretty bad state. And I think your generation, I've got real hope that you're all going to come through and fix it again and make it work better again. Because I think you see the world in a good way. You don't see the world through the same eyes that we were brought up to sort of see it. I think you kind of see it in a different way, in a more, you know, more equitable way. And if you can kind of carry that thought in there about reaching out to people, finding the common ground, that's what makes politics work in the end. The common ground is where solutions get found. Yeah.
I think probably just to touch on it, a little bit of an explanation of what we've done locally is about honesty and explanation and taking a risk. And the example that I'd use would be the galleries. And actually, it's a demolition site at the moment. When we decided to do that, we got loads of stick on it of saying this is not the right thing to do. And people are now realising it is, and the way forward on it, because it's a changing environment. So you had to take that risk, but you had to be honest with people about why you were doing it, but also explain. And now people are, and I think the social media bit, what Andy spoke about, we got a deluge of that. Now it's actually coming down and down now. People will see it. Wigan will be transformed with that centre, you know, whether it be housing or nightlife, different way of shopping. You all know shopping's a different environment now than it's ever been. So that's probably an explanation of how you tackle differences. You can't always just say to people, well, listen to you and that's it. You've got to do that. And in Wigan, we're lucky that we can take risks and do that. And that's why it's been so exemplary of moving forward on projects.
And finally, just one question about looking into the social media part of it, especially with the latest election, talking about how you think it's a bad thing. I also want to think of how it may have, like, with the people hiding behind a fake name, they could maybe spread fake news and then maybe it changes other people's opinions on someone else that maybe messes everything up in a way. How do you think on that?
No, I get very worried about that, and I think what you've said is right. I think we saw it here after the appalling incident in Southport, where there was just a fake news sort of machine got out there, and it's dangerous. I think, you know. So I think there's going to have to be regulation of social media. I don't. You can have free speech, but it must come with accountability. Yeah. And you know, that to me has got to be fixed. I think we need to get more. Your generation needs to get. You're more literate about the digital world than we were. I think we kind of weren't born into it, and it wasn't natural territory. Whereas I go to my kids now, and I don't know if this happens to you. Probably does, because we're very similar, aren't we? I kind of say to them, "Oh, is this a genuine text I've had from Apple or from the bank?" And they're like, "Don't touch it." I'm like, I'm literally about, you know. And I
exploding.
What I find with your generation is, when you see something on like X or something, you've decoded it in an instant, like who's behind it and why they've done it, and I just kind of feel, you know what I mean? You've got that sort of, you've got that understanding of it all, but you've got to take that understanding to fix it. I think to make it work in the public interest, because I perceive it not to be working. I think there are good things about social media, don't get me wrong, but I think the negatives are outweighing the positives now. And we've just seen an American election where somebody basically bought a social media platform, skewed it completely to one side of that election, threw the whole weight of it at the election and influenced it, no question. Some of it with falsehoods and actually, you know, borderline, you know, racist statements and things. So, I think it's. I keep saying your generation's got to fix everything. You're going to have to fix social media as well as politics. So
you've got a bigger job than us.
No pressure on you.
Thank you very much.
No worries. Great questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So can I thank everybody to listen to today's podcast. As we come to an end, I want to thank the college who've put a lot of work behind the scenes, and I want to thank the students for all the questions that they've given. But more, I want to thank Andy for being here today, being open and honest. And I think what we've heard today is the real Andy Burnham and the thing behind the stuff behind the man. Me and Andy go back a long way. We've been mates for a long time. and I take real privilege in saying that we are good friends.
Oh, you got me crying
I know,
now
I
at the
mean,
end of this
I don't
podcast.
mean it really. But thank you. So I'm Chris Reed here. This has been Ready and Willing podcast, and look forward to the next episode.